the tiny heaven and the tiny hell.
You may think that your forgetful memory is a curse, but we all gradually forget what we know. That is to say, we can no longer recall information that we learned. From 1880 to 1885, German psychologist Hermann Ebbinghaus ran a series of experiments on himself to figure out how fast he forgot things by studying a series of what he called nonsense syllables and getting himself to remember them later. He found that immediately after learning, his memory of the nonsense syllables was reasonable. Nearly 60% he got right. But after a month, he could barely get more than 20% right. This curve was drawn by Ebbinghaus' original forgetting curve data, but the data came from only one man himself, and a one-person study doesn't make for great science. Happily, more recent work with a larger sample of participants has been able to replicate the finding. Microlearning is helping to mitigate the forgetting curve by improving the effectiveness of learning. Small, bite-sized chunks of information about a single topic repeated throughout the short presentation. Change seems to be an undisputable constant in curriculum development. Now I'm going to get a bit nerdy. The shift from the second to the third millennium thinking, as traced by Usury Felix, identifies a tangible shift from the instructivist to the constructivist pedagogy. And constructivists, or what people call progressivists, focus on the student's interests and experiences rather than on a predetermined body of knowledge. This makes these progressivists special in that they view knowledge as not static but dynamic, and the student's interests and needs are as important as the content to be learned. Remember John Dewey? And who doesn't? He was a prominent figure in progressivism. He stated that the primary purpose of education was to get people ready for the democratic life. As Richard Pring, a respected author and educational philosopher, looked at the evolution of education in 2004, he stated that we live in a time of change, and change undeniably affects the content of curriculum. So what has this got to do with microlearning? In a time of unparalleled technological growth, a shifting to the constructivist pedagogy, and the advent of design thinking, microlearning has emerged. Circling back to curriculum as described by Russell Yates, microlearning is a technology tool that is becoming less visible as a separate entity. We find examples of it each and every day as we search for content on the internet. If you want to learn about the Tyler model of curriculum design in less than 2 minutes, there it is on YouTube. Want to know about the history of curriculum in America in less than 7 minutes? Yes, YouTube again. And how about how to make someone fall in love with you in less than 5 minutes? Well, read. Just search the web. Microlearning has allowed the entire educational structure to be remodeled to better match the individual learner's needs. Next, microlearning gives the learners a choice for learning content. You can read, watch, listen, depending on your individual, personalized needs and passions. This increases motivation, enhances curriculum content, and allows choice for students and teachers. And finally, microlearning allows authentic learning tasks and meaningful materials to be timed to individual needs. You pick the time, you pick the content, and you watch the microlearning module to learn. Curriculum design is destined for change. In 2015, millennials surpassed Gen Xers as the largest generation in the workforce. By 2025, they will make up 75% of the workforce. This means that in the next 10 to 15 years, you will see the greatest transfer of knowledge that has ever taken place. With the transfer of knowledge comes a transfer of learning behavior. Millennials watch videos, access Instagram or Facebook posts, they search retailers, they buy products online, and they check their emails and social media accounts several times a day. Everything comes into the brain very quickly and in small pieces. Microlearning is designing content in short training segments of 3 to 10 minutes, covering one, and I'm going to emphasize that, one specific topic to keep it focused and to aid learner retention. Studies have shown that there's a limit to how much information the brain can absorb and retain during a lesson. You can compare microlearning with chunking. Chunking is a concept from a psychologist, George Miller, and he states that the brain can generally retain between 3 to 9 facts before either committing them to long-term memory storage or losing them. That's why it makes sense that these brain limitations lead to shorter lessons. Microlearning can be implemented in any learning environment, from a traditional classroom to flipped classrooms to virtual classrooms and all places in between. It solves a trend that has emerged in the digital age: time. Teachers have less time to create content, and students have less time to consume all of that information. Students can learn anytime, anywhere they want, without spending hours and hours behind their desks studying. Traditional content learning models have a hard time reaching the students whose attention spans are rapidly shrinking. According to the National Center for Biotechnology information, the average attention span has shrunk from 12 seconds in 2000 to 8 seconds in 2013. That's 1 second less than that of a goldfish. Even more impressive is that people switch between digital devices about 21 times per hour. On top of that, we can only tolerate 4 to 8 minutes of factual lecture before seeking other stimuli. This makes it difficult for students to retain information from any sort of a long class. Don't worry, microlearning is here to save the day. Every microlearning lesson is one module of a larger track that a teacher assigns on a given topic, and it can kind of be compared to the chapters of a book. Microlearning emphasizes just-in-time learning, it boosts retention rates and recall, and it is perfect for mobile learning devices. It engages the learners, and it is cost-effective. Here are 4 tips to help you implement your first microlearning course. Number 1, each microlearning unit should be focused on a specific objective. Just one objective. Don't try to push 30 minutes worth of content into 5 minutes. Keep it clear and follow your objective. Number 2, make it interactive. Keep it engaging and interactive. Just because it's short doesn't mean your students will be intrinsically interested. 5 boring minutes equals 5 boring minutes. And don't overwhelm your students with a constant series of these bite-sized learning modules. Schedule them kind of in between each other and around the other content that you're presenting. And finally, some things just are not appropriate for microlearning modules. Although you could create chunked modules for both of these things, it's probably not the best way to be teaching the students. So think about the content and see if it's appropriate for a microlearning lesson. And microlearning works because the more we repeat and use information, the more likely it is to end up in long-term memory. That's why microlearning works. Microlearning is the slow and steady tortoise to the cognitive overloaded hare.
Did you know that you have just watched a microlearning lesson? According to a 2018 study published by shiftlearning.com and confirmed by Dr. Ray Jimenez in his book 3-Minute E-Learning, and Brian Westfall in his article, Top LMS Features to Drive Employee Engagement, microlearning makes the transfer of learning 17% more efficient and increases student engagement by 50%. It also reduces development costs by 50% and increases the speed of development by 300% with microlearning e-courses. Learning in stretches of 3 to 7 minutes matches the working memory capacity and attention spans of most humans. Numbers don't lie. This is why microlearning is better for your learners and you. And I bet that e-learning designers and developers are discussing it when they meet at the water cooler. See you later, alligator.
Tiny is the way, tiny is the way, tiny is the only way to go now. Let's all get small, go down the well, between the tiny heaven and the tiny hell.
Tiny is better. And that awesome song comes from the album Graveyard Jones by Jake LaBotts. It's a song called Tiny. Tee hee hee.